So it was a devastating couple of years because there was so much disappointment, but it also made me pretty much resilient to rejection. So, and a lot of people refuse to check their egos, and I think that that's where they give up. And I think coming into it with a realistic expectation instead of like all of these grandeur things will prepare people a lot. So I really like helping people out with that.
You're listening to Writer Unblocked, a podcast for aspiring and experienced authors. I'm your host and author coach, Nicole, and on this show, we chat with up-and-coming as well as best-selling authors, literary agents, and publishing professionals to inspire you and keep the vibe high. Today on Writer Unblocked, I'm chatting with author Cara M. Zone about her amazing book, Cinders Burn at Midnight, which I'm devouring, by the way. I love this conversation. We covered so much. First off, Cara is an advocate and educator on the indie publishing industry. I think she's so smart in her approach and strategy for writing and releasing her book. And I love how open and vulnerable she is about the underlying trauma themes in the book and her own experience with C-PTSD and the impact it has had on her writing. We chat about audiobooks, formatting, resources, and of course, Cara's plan for the next 12 months. As usual, additional information will be available for you in the show notes. Okay, let's dive in. Welcome, Cara, to Writer Unblocked, and thank you so much for being so generous with your time and agreeing to not only be on the show, but to share your manuscript with me so I could read it and devour it as I am as we speak.
Thank you. And thank you for having me too. I'm super excited. And I feel like really comfortable and everything like that. So thank you very much. I appreciate
Yay.
it. And I
Okay.
appreciate your time too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I obviously have a ton of questions, but let me just get my excitement under control and give you an opportunity to just tell us a little bit about you and the book that we're going to talk about.
So I have been all right, all the way back, whatever, quick overview. I came from a really complicated family. There's lots of toxicity and stuff, which I'll actually talk about in a different question. So when I got out on my own when I was 17, I had no idea about life. And I didn't have any self-esteem and I didn't have anything. So of course I got pregnant when I was 22. And I had two children with this, their father. We got married and everything, and we were really, really bad for each other. I brought the worst out in him. He brought the worst out in me. And one day, and I had to learn how to be a mom while still trying to figure myself out. And one day I woke up and I had these characters in my head and I had to write them down. And 160,000 words later, I had my first manuscript in like 7 weeks. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to type. I had a notebook and I wrote every single piece down. And then I knew I needed help writing. So I went online, which was a very different place in 2008 than it is now. It's a little bit,
Yes.
which is really hard to think about because it's pretty bad now, but you can find safe spaces now, and it was hard. So I met these writing people online, and of course I got did all kinds of weird things, but what led me to it also led me to get out of my marriage. So I took two kids and I got divorced, and he's happy now. He has a young daughter with his new wife, and they're great. My kids are 21 and 19, so they're adults. I went to college between 2013 and 2018, graduated with an accidental 2 bachelor's degrees, which I don't recommend having.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. And I worked. I found this amazing religious studies program, and I loved the professor. And one of the professors, obviously there was a lot, but so I kind of accidentally just took on a second bachelor's degree, but I did it for professional writing and editing with the intent that I would always end up where I'm at now. Between 2018 and 2019, I was doing some virtual assistant stuff because I had been working at home. It was just easier to do while I had my kids and was going to school. And I just started picking up some ghostwriting gigs after that. I did nonfiction first, and then I moved into fiction.
So you're a
Um,
ghostwriter as
I
well.
well, yes, I won't do fiction anymore because the
Okay.
fiction is for me now. But I have done it. I've written and been a part of over 100 books in the last 4 years.
Whoa.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's a lot. I'm fascinated. We could have a whole another episode on ghostwriting because I'm
Okay.
fascinated by the whole concept of ghostwriting. So I'm gonna have to book you for another hour.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love talking about it. I love being able to bring visibility to that too, because there are like academies out there that take people's money. They'll tell you if you publish a book a month, you'll get to be a millionaire in no time. And they take lots and lots of money and they don't teach anybody, they don't give them any realistic expectations. They all go to Upwork, they pay their writers garbage. They expect you to have Stephen King level, authorship with one 50,000 word book in 5 weeks, right? So it's
Oh.
it's a pretty it's a pretty bad environment. But I was happy to get out of it, but it also helped me learn about indie publishing, which is where I'm now. I took about 4 years in the ghostwriting world. I started learning anything I could because there's always more to learn about indie publishing. And yeah, now I'm starting to do my own stuff, which is I like a slow build. Some people like a big build, but I know enough stuff to help other people not give up because indie publishing is so hard.
So you're,
And I
you're an indie publish educator now.
yes,
That's
also.
great. So you're taking the knowledge and you're sharing. And I see you answering questions and being very generous with your time on your social media. So that's great to see.
Thank you. It's really important. Every single client that came out of one of those academies that I worked with through Upwork, every single one of them went broke and did not continue. And there's no reason for them not to continue except for the fact that they ran out of money. But
Wow.
there are still things that you can do organically. Um, so it was a devastating couple of years because there was so much disappointment, but it also made me pretty much resilient to rejection. So don't want
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, you gotta grow a thick skin if you wanna be an author and yeah, and that's that you can only grow it through multiple rejections and experiencing it and going through it and getting better at it each time.
Absolutely. And a lot of people refuse to check their egos, and I think that that's where they give up. And I think coming into it with a realistic expectation instead of like all of these grandeur things will prepare people a lot. So I really like helping people out with that.
That's fantastic. So
Oh,
wait, so you started writing so the idea of these characters came to you. You started writing it down. You had over 100,000 words, but then you
took
started
a
ghostwriting as well for
mhm.
others. So as all this is happening, your book is in the background.
It is. It was. I put it on pause until I figured out how to write a story and like sort of do the formula. I like to call it a formula, but I don't know what else to call it. To like writing a good story that's intriguing. And in September or November of 2023, I was like, it's my time. Now it's for me. So I wrote it and now I'm just focused on my fiction and my words, and I do nonfiction ghostwriting, and then I do some book consulting also,
That
writing consulting and everything.
that is fantastic. And if people want to find you, because I put information in the show notes for everybody, of course, we'll put your socials and if anybody wants to reach out or the best way if people have would like to talk to you about your services, etc.
Wonderful.
So, oh my gosh, I can't. Okay, so I saw that you plan on releasing multiple trilogies of this
Yes.
series. So the book is called Cinders Burn at Midnight.
Yes.
And okay, so much to talk about. I want to talk about the book, but real quick about the intention of this massive multi trilogy. I need to ask you. I mean, even if we were just talking about this one book, I want to ask you about how do you keep track of it, not just all the characters and the magic rules and things like that, but if you are going to expand the world and bring more and more and more into it through multiple releases, do you have a system or a framework to keep track of everybody?
No, it's all in my head, but because of the way things are developing and because I'm writing novellas in between the novels also with like side characters and everything like that, I'm going to have to start writing them down. I like spreadsheets a lot, and I my Google Drive is a crazy, like, I mean, it's not crazy, it's super organized, and because my brain works really well in folders and little squares
Yes.
while also being creative. So, yeah, yes, because at this point, I started writing book 2, and Caitlin and Max's father isn't in it yet, but there's still memories and flashbacks and everything, and I started realizing that I gave his magical smell the wrong thing, and I had to go back and reread everything, and I don't wanna do that for everybody, so I'll start making, like, little
Notes.
bios and stuff.
Yes, little character notes. I'm so impressed that you have this all in your head. So do you know how it's all gonna end, or are you sort of still figuring it out?
The bigger picture is really planned out. What I've found, yes, I know how it's going to end, and, I'm excited about it. But also, like, all the little nuancy stuff that comes in during, like, the drafting phase.
Yeah.
So, like, her father calls her lightning bug. That didn't happen until, like, the 3rd time, and in my original version, they had a connection, like, the trium perfectum, it was not called that, it was called nothing, and my publicist helped me come up with that. But, like, in the drafting phase, like, that developed more. So those kind of little nuances are starting to get shined up the more drafting I do and the more writing I do.
This is great. Okay. Okay. So now we're deep talking to the book. So for anyone listening, let's tell them what let's give them the book blurb, so to speak. Tell me, what is this book about?
This is about a girl or a woman, young woman who gets her mother uses her magical powers that she doesn't even know she has because they drug her, and, she's finding out when she finally gets to go to college that she does have magic. And then she starts getting the flashbacks, which are really terrible. And there's a super reconnection moment with her brother, which is kind of what when I started, it was hopeful for me and my brother, and we actually did end up connecting. That was a little bit ago. So we have that good connection now. But so they heal that bond, and then she comes up with, the truth, and it's pretty horrifying, and then she kinda has to deal with that kinda stuff, along with having all of these weird new magical connections to some dude she doesn't even know, who's her brother's best friend, and so they have to figure out how to maneuver around that.
Well, we love a good brother's best friend trope around here, so I am not mad about that at all.
Yeah.
And it's got a little bit of, tension because she, like you said, she's meeting this guy. She just no clue who he is, like, aside from my estranged brother's best friend. So there's
Mhm. Well, and she's never looked at a romance as anything more than a business transaction, and so that actually is a new mountain for her to climb also. So, and it's interesting, Finn and Aiden, they're twins, and they come from a very solid foundation of a family, and so they're kind of the whole brother's best friend thing, but in reverse.
right.
So
There's just I'm a little more than halfway through, and I'm loving the magic system. I'm loving the smells, how everybody has a different magic smell, so to speak. And I I can relate a little bit to family trauma and those types of experiences. So I think why it hooked me right away is because obviously it becomes very clear that something's going on with her mom that you mentioned has been drugging her, and it's a difficult topic because it is traumatic. It's trauma, and it's a type of trauma that you don't realize is happening or that you've been through until someone sort of like confronts you, like someone else has
mhm,
to shake you and be like, "But don't you understand what's been happening or what this person has been doing to you?"
mhm,
So I really could relate to Caitlin as, she has a desire to go to college and clearly it's coming out of a desire to take control of her own life, even though she doesn't really know what's going on, but she has that inkling. Like, I want to take control of something in my life. I want to take dance classes, or I want to go to this college. And she gets to leave home. And of course, that's when the magic and all the stuff
Yeah.
starts to reveal itself. So tell me a little bit about that, about the theme of trauma and the we talked a little bit, you and I, before offline, about C-PTSD. What does that
Yes.
stand for our listeners? How does that affect you as the writer and then the story?
So, complex post traumatic stress syndrome or disorder is CPTSD is actually a result of experienced chronic trauma, basically prolonged child abuse in some kind of way, prolonged neglect, domestic violence, and then it's pretty close to PTSD except I don't even want to say because they're both awful, right? Like, but the trauma is fractured into trauma. So you're constant like I am completely hyper vigilant to the point of my therapist told me one time that I was way too hyper focused on all the details of my marriage and that was causing some tension because I was so hyper focused cuz if he like yawns while I'm talking, I'll start looking like why is he yawning? What did I do wrong? Why is he bored? And my brain will start to like
Wow, that's
um
trauma. That's
yeah. Yeah, and then so I looked up, like, what some of the because I know what CPTSD is, and in trying to explain it to other people, I wanted to get a little bit more, like, black and white and everything, so flashbacks or re-experiencing some of the traumatic events, I feel like I'm a little lucky in the fact that I don't experience flashbacks as full length flashbacks of what happened. Like they'll come in at blips and blurbs, and of course I'll get affected and stuff, but it's not ever like full color audio sensory like overload, and which is really interesting about the brain and how that protects you as well. Um, Excessive attention to the possibility of danger, which is hypervigilance. I still have my husband is on a trip this week, and I still have terror when I walk up basement steps by myself and someone's going to grab me. The intrusive thoughts, happen I think to everybody, but this is like intrusive thoughts on steroids.
right.
So I still get an insane number of them like every day, even though I have the proper tools to deal with it, even though every single thing could be very happy for me. That's usually when they strike the most.
Isn't that funny? That's It's when you're on the up and up.
Uh-huh.
That's when this almost, would you consider it self-sabotage, or is that different?
I think that it's a part of self-sabotage. I think that so I love neurology because of the CPTSD and the PTSD and everything like that. And I think that when you get traumatized, your neurons go in a shifting way, which is why it's so hard for people to shift back in the right direction. And I think because our neurons get so used to being on that track that it's super hard to pull them back out.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, everything's okay. Oh my gosh, everything's great. No, it's not. That remember what happened that time?
Right.
So
Yeah, and especially when we experience that in childhood, it's even more deeply ingrained, right? Because it's just too deep to correct over the course of a couple months or a
yeah.
year, or with 6 rounds of therapy or what have you. It's like, "Oh, if
I
only."
Yeah, exactly, and if I ever talk too much, just let me know, I'll stop talking.
No, no worries. Because I'm wondering, obviously, with what's going on with your character, Caitlin, in the book, and family abuse and coercion and psychological manipulation. And again, when we look to our caregivers, especially a mother,
Mhm,
you that's your mom. That's who is supposed to take care of you, and that's who is your protector. And so, in Caitlin, when her brother's a little mad at her for going along with mom, it's like, well, some people sometimes don't have the compassion or understanding. Like, this person is not acting this way because they're stupid, right?
mhm,
There's this like, oh, look how stupid this
mhm.
this girl or this woman or this person is. But I think what people don't understand is, especially when it's a caregiver, like mother or father, that is a deep biological ingrained. That's your first protector in life, or it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and honestly, because I went again, I'm not obsessed with the neurology and, CBT, cognitive brain, therapy, but I really dove into it completely because helping me understand that helped me, figure out how to shift gears. Yes, thank you. So I found through, CBT and my own, uh, weird obsession with neurology that we're actually our core selves form until we are 6 years old. So everything that happens in those years gets that's kind of in our core, like, that's kind of who we are. So if you're still developing who you are, but you're traumatized or neglected or, in any kind of way, that sits in your core. It, like, resonates there. So I think that that's pretty I love it because it's fascinating, but I hate that we all have to go through it.
Of course, but I love having this conversation with you because it's in the context of how you applied these things to your book. This isn't just
Yeah.
a book that you're like, "Oh, what if?" You have the foundation to be able to develop a character that has this because you're not just sort of guessing
Mhm.
what someone with this background would have going on in their mind or how they would act. You actually can really describe it beautifully and give her that depth as a character.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's actually why I really did have Michael be there for them for the first, first formative years, and he did that because that would have helped them become who they were, but he still needed to go away. So
I know. I was like, "Oh my god." When, it's tough. It's tough when there's family fracture and then everybody's trying to put the pieces back together and then who do I trust and whose fault was this? And no, you abandoned me. No, I abandoned, it's heavy. It's
Mhm.
heavy, but like I said, the reading, at least so far, to me, it's got the undertones of that, but it's a fun read.
Good.
And I love books about magic where the magic system is just clear to me about what's going on. There's a lot going on, but it's well understood and presented to me. So like, okay, you're shifting and you have more than one power and you're connected in this way and this is how your magic works. As an aside, I wanted to say that I suffer from cynophobia, which is the fear of dogs. I am terrified of
Oh,
dogs. And so I was
okay.
like, as I was reading your character Finn, I'm like, oh, I'm swooning for Finn. And then I find out that he is a shapeshifter and he happens to shift into a dog. And I'm like, would I be okay with that? Would I be like, what if I end up falling in love with a shapeshifter? And
I love that thought. That's so
this is
good.
what goes through my mind. I remember I was at an author conference once and they were like, it came up that I was afraid of dogs and they were convinced that they wanted to write a romance novel about a girl who is afraid of dogs who falls in love with a guy, but he has a dog he loves. And how are they going to get together? And I'm like, stop, just leave me alone. Leave me alone here with my phobia.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's kinda been done, right? There's something. Must Love Dogs is the opposite, though. Everybody has to love the dogs.
Everybody has to love the dogs. Yes.
So, but
So,
yeah,
um,
that's interesting too.
yeah, well, anyway, I'm really really eager. I wanted to ask you. I think I saw on your social media that your ARC reviews are coming in
Yeah.
for Cinders Burn at Midnight. So, can you tell our listeners what ARC stands for and what happens when your reviews are in? How does that affect the manuscript? Why is that useful?
So, ARC readers or advanced readers, they get a free copy of the book with the promise, and it is not ever guaranteed because people get sick or they get hurt or they forget or, but you give them the free book and they read it with the promise sort of that they will review it on Amazon and Goodreads and all the fun places. As far as changing it, my practice at this point is really I'm pretty honed in on when it gets by the time it gets to an ARC reader. But when I first started, and again, I was working with clients that were like, publish a book in 5 weeks, like a 50,000 word book. So the ARC readers would reach out and be like, "Hey, there's some editorial things here, or they would reach out with questions and everything. So we would go back and fix that before it would go to publish. And usually you try to send ARC books out at least 2 weeks early, maybe three. So you have that time before the launch and everything like that. But right now, I'm getting a lot of good reviews. A lot of people are sharing their stuff, and it's very exciting and surprising again because it's weird. It's like a surreal experience. And what they're actually doing is posting, so they'll post online, probably social media. Most of my people are at Instagram, but I know they also have TikTok and I don't. I
I
gotta
know.
I got an
I resist it.
well, I somebody asked me if they could review my novel on TikTok, and I was like, "Sure." And then they were like, "Well, I don't see your account." And I was like, "I don't have an account." And so I got an account, and like 3 days later, they slammed the TikTok thing, like, "You have to sell it," or blah, blah, blah. So I was like, "I'm just gonna wait and see what happens. Then I'll go
I
over
have
there."
been in a wait and see too because like, do I really want to dedicate all this? But the book community there too is
Yeah,
wonderful and intense and beautiful and it. I think if this can settle with whether the government or not is going to let us keep it, then maybe yes, of course, let's like go all in. Okay, so this book
yeah.
comes out. Neglected to mention this. This is coming out the 21st
It
January.
is. It is, yeah.
It's imminent.
It is. It's very close.
Tell
So,
me what you have planned for that day. I want to hear all
ugh.
about what the plan. What is about? You wake up on January 21st. What is happening?
I don't know. So I went in so I learned a lot about indie publishing before I started on this path. The one thing I had no clue about, and I'm learning lots of hard lessons, was distribution. I knew I had to get it to a distributor, but I didn't know how. And so I didn't wait too long to get it to the distributor, but there were issues with some of the tax verification stuff with the one distributor I was doing. And while I reached out to them and said, "Hey, what's wrong with this?" And they told me, "Nothing is wrong with it. You just have to wait." And then 2.5 weeks later, they were like, "Oh, your tax verification." So it got pushed back a little bit more than I had anticipated. My plan was to have a launch party and to have all the books and do, like do stuff with some print stuff because we have some really great local bookstores around here and our library is really supportive. So I will be having a launch party late, but the digital books and the print books should be ready for publication by the well, no, they are ready for publication. I actually got told that I'm not going through KDP, so
Oh, you're
KDP is
not? Okay.
Kindle Direct Press. I went wide because if I can still put my book on Amazon if I go wide,
Yep.
but if you do KDP with KU, I'm saying all the acronyms, Kindle Direct Press, which may be wrong because sometimes I mess that up, and then Kindle Unlimited, you can only go through them. You can't put it to Barnes and Noble ebooks. You can't put it to Apple ebooks. You can't do it that. They have a ton of fantastic support for indie authors with their stuff. But for what I wanted to do, get into local bookstores, my
Right.
library, they won't order from Amazon because that's just a whole other thing.
Correct. And when we talk to authors about going wide, and for anyone listening who you hear that term, that's what going wide means. Means you're distributing, you're not giving exclusivity to one retailer or distributor. You're going as wide as you possibly can. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I have seen that a lot, that if you are going through Amazon, it's a little harder to get into physical stores because just the tension, they don't like them.
Mhm.
And so it might be a little harder for the author to get their physical book in the store.
It will, and even for local authors, because even like Barnes& and Noble loves supporting I worked at Borders that is no longer open a billion years ago.
Borders. I remember
Yeah,
Borders.
but we loved getting local authors, and we would order the books for them and stuff, but if they go through Amazon, like, Barnes& and Noble won't touch us because from what I understand, and I could be wrong, Amazon does something called consignment, which means that they'll loan it out to them, but if they don't sell it, the bookstore doesn't get any money back, and I think Amazon just leaves them with the whole book, and,
What
like So
Yeah.
I'm absolutely sure that I'm not explaining it correctly, but that's what I've gotten.
But that's no, yeah, I'm glad you're going wide. Now, in the spirit of going wide, and I don't know if how much you know about my professional background, but I'm going to bring this up. What about the audio book?
I eventually will. I have the audiobook cover.
Okay.
Audiobook is a completely different beast of formatting, and since I was figuring out the distribution and everything at this point, because I do my own formatting too. Like I pretty much do as much as I possibly can because it's expensive.
It
It's just
is. So
expensive.
I didn't know that. So Cinders Burn
Yeah.
at Midnight, you did all that formatting.
Yes,
Wow.
I did. With the help of a program called Atticus, which makes it really easy, but the
It looks
Amazon
beautiful.
actually.
It
Yeah.
looks
Oh, thank
beautiful.
you.
I
Thank you
love
very much.
the what is it, like a flower pattern at the beginning of the chapter?
It's
Yes,
a cherry blossom.
a cherry blossom. Okay,
Um,
so for yes, audiobook
w
formatting is very important. So I'm glad you're acknowledging that for our
it is. It's
listeners.
very important, and it's very different. It takes longer to format because there are certain regulations that books have to go through, but I would have to hire a voice actor, and then most voice actors are booked out, like, 3 to 4 months in advance,
The good
and
ones are,
then
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, and then it would have to go through that formatting process, and I was like, "I have to do that later because I already have this much to do, and I don't wanna add." I had to sort of take curves where I could take
Of
curves,
course,
but
yeah. Some authors can swing a simultaneous publication with audio, but it is very difficult. But I also do think there's an advantage in releasing it later because then you're drumming up marketing, publicity, and promotion all over again for the book as a whole. But it's nice to have all the formats because there's some real audiobook lovers out there, right? And they might
yeah.
not read because of disability, or they might not read because of time. Or like me, I read certain things and I listen to certain things.
Yeah.
And I just have been in audio for 15 years. So I love a good audiobook. I love a good narrator that just
Mhm.
makes your narrator will make or break your audiobook, right? It's just like really
Absolutely.
important. Would you do multi-voice or would you get one really good narrator who does an amazing job at multiple voices?
I
Because
don't
they exist.
Yeah. I always assumed that I would do multiverse voice because I have the 2 different perspectives, but you're right, like, if they're really good, it doesn't matter because they're gonna be entertaining as it is,
Yeah,
and if anybody's listening, if you hire 1 audiobook narrator, that costs money, and so if you hire 2, that costs more money, so
that costs more money. Yes, there was a company I connected with. I think it's called One Night Stand Studios, and they
Fun.
help authors with this. They take care of everything, and they send you the auditions, and they help you find the narrators. And so there's just the audiobook industry grew. I forget the percentage, but it was an insane percentage from 2022 to 2023,
Mm.
faster than print and romance, romantasy, all these things are having a really big moment. And so if they have a big moment in print, audio is even more, it's exploding the audio format. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then Spotify got in. Spotify
Mhm.
started distributing audiobooks. It hasn't even been a year
Mhm.
and they're doing really well. So I always encourage authors, if they can do it, properly, take your time, find the right narrator. And yeah, sometimes you have to fix the writing in the book. And by fix it, I mean there are things when we read a book that the brain filters out.
Mhm.
But when you read it out loud, it's very jarring. So you have to
Yes.
kind of sometimes change the dialogue or remove the he said, she said, because it's implied in the narration. And so there's no need for the extra wording.
Mhm.
And then there's just certain scenes that work really well in print, and then when you hear a narrator read them out loud, you're like, "Ooh, why does that not sound great?" So it is, it's a careful thing. It's not just feeding your I think Amazon has a program now where you can press a button and it will make your ebook into an audiobook using AI voice, and I really implore and beg everybody not
I've
to do
heard
that.
that it's really horrifying at this point, but I think you can do that with, like, any program, right? Like, I can click on a Google Doc and it'll read it out, but it still won't sound the way a narrator would and
No.
in the same, celebration of audiobooks.
Yeah. Yeah, I just it just I've been moved by some really great audiobooks, and the craft of writing and the craft of narrating are two that I really respect. And you can be transported by a fantastic writer and a fantastic narrator. You know what it is? It's the safest way. You know how when you read a book and you adore it and love it with all your heart, and then they make the movie and you just want to cry because it's horrible and they
Yes.
change it. The audiobook is a way to experience the performance of your favorite book without the fear that they're going to change and ruin everything for you, because they're going to stay faithful to the text,
Mhm.
but you're getting the voice, you're getting the perform, like it's just a
Mhm.
different experience. So I will keep my eye on you. I will be very excited
I'll let you
when
know.
yes, when the audiobook edition is coming, and maybe I would have you back on to talk about that experience,
Okay.
because now you can self-publish audiobooks as before you really couldn't.
And
And it's
I joined this amazing group. It's called Anchors Mastermind, and it's all self-publishers, all indie publishers from any part of their journey. We have people who haven't published anything. We have people who have been in it for, 20 years, 10 years. They've been public. They grew up basically with the indie publishing industry. They've seen it in its infancy when it was really ugly, and they
exactly.
everything that came with it, and they've made amazing careers out of it. And they are a great resource too, because I asked, like, who do you do for audiobooks? And three of them just started throwing like all of their names and their websites out at me. So I definitely have that resource available too.
That's great. I wanted to ask you, speaking of resource, so obviously you're self-publishing because you have a great foundation and understanding of what you're doing. But talk to me about who, 'cause sometimes there's a misconception of like, oh, she's doing it all. But earlier in the conversation, you mentioned a publicist. So
Yeah.
who's on your team? Is it a cover art designer, a publicist, an editor? Like, talk to me about who all is team Kara.
Yes, no, absolutely. So one of the very first hard lessons that I learned, and it wasn't really a hard lesson. I already kind of knew it, but it was kind of shocking still that people like say, "Oh, you wrote a book." And they look at the book, they'll look at a Stephen King novel and they'll be like, "Only Stephen King was included in the making of this book." And so I love that question because it does bring to light like when I decided that it was time for me to start, jumping in on indie publishing, I was like, I need to be visible. I am a no-name author. Just because I put a book on Amazon doesn't mean anybody's going to find it unless I really, and I hated the idea because I think you probably know this, but all writers are pretty much introverts and we don't want to be seen. But I had to, I saw so many people, and I hate using the word fail because they didn't fail, but the only reason why they failed was because they gave up, because they refused to be visible. And I did get a publicist, and she's amazing. And I won't use her name right now or her business only because she's going to be doing something else and she's not taking clients anymore. But
That's fair.
so,
That's
but
not from
she's
Barber.
incredible. And I did use a cover artist. Plus, there's beta readers, there's the editors, there's even the one indie publisher that I was working with. We were a team of 7. There were 3 writers, there were 2 editors, there was a developmental editor, there was the producer, and and that was bare bones. Like, there's so much that goes into it, and you cannot do it alone. I
No.
actually just started working with someone because I can't keep up with the social media at the pace it's going for me, and I don't want to because my idea it was really I want to build genuine connections with audience, and I don't want to like skimp there.
Right.
So she's come in and she's done all of that.
So she handles
However,
your social media.
she does a lot of the lighter lifting. Like, she'll go in and she'll like things and she'll find people to follow and sort of build them in with my voice, coming like that. But I am on Instagram pretty much every day. I do answer all comments if Instagram shows me the notifications, because sometimes they won't.
Can we talk about this? Because sometimes it says I have a notification, there's nothing there. I'm scared that I'm missing messages. It's messy.
Well, and I'll get a message like, "This person liked and commented on this, 6 days ago," and I'm like, "Why are you just telling me right now?" So
That's great. But you do a lot. I see you hop on, you do a lot of videos, you show your face,
yeah.
your artwork, which is beyond gorgeous. And I tell people, please don't skimp on the artwork because that's what we're seeing.
I know, and I know it's controversial, but it is one place where I sort of cut some of the fat off because I have paid illustrators for my art. Have a background in graphics, so I can do a lot with that. But a lot of my character art right now is AI. So,
The
and I
character
don't.
art, but the
Yeah,
book cover
it was not. I
was
went
not
to a gentleman and he likes to be known as his company, but I'm still gonna call him Diogo because that's his name. He lives in Spain and he's really, really good. My book cover and some of my character illustrations are definitely I pay for them. I make sure that I give back to the community, really just because I wanted to. Like, I just didn't want to, number 1, do it myself, and number 2, I really want to support other people in the business. His company is Book Design Company,
book design
and
company. Okay, we'll link
yeah,
it.
he's I can give you the link if you wanna share that too, but I was really adamant on not wanting people on the cover because, sort of like you were saying, I didn't want to give anybody the idea of what my characters should look like. That's why I have a lot of different illustrators giving me, commissioning a lot of different illustrators because everybody's going to see these characters the way they want to see them.
Absolutely.
And I just didn't want to already have a predetermined image for that. So, which I'm really excited about because that's sort of the direction that fantasy is going in. They're taking away the characters and they're just giving really, really strong images. So I had my door
I
and I
love
had,
the doors. There are multiple doors because every time I look, I'm like, this is a different door, but it's gorgeous.
yeah,
The door theme.
those are AI. So
But they're gorgeous, and that's
thank you.
okay. That's okay. Like you said, I just think the cover art is the jewel, right? Like that's the
Yes.
piece that I always say invest in the best
Yes.
designer you can afford and make sure that that's something that's very eye-catching.
Yes, and he gave his package was very for what I know cover design artists should charge. I think he undercharges for his work. So he gave me the digital, the audio, and the full print cover, and he, like, got it to me in 2 weeks. He gave me 4 samples.
Wow.
I said, "Hey, can you do this or this with it?" He did another round and a draft, and, of course, they were all beautiful, and, of course, I teared up because, this is finally coming to life and stuff. Well, I cried. I didn't even just tear up. I was like, "This is amazing." Yeah. And he turned it around again and it looks exactly like I wanted it to, and I said, "Wait, the fire can't be red, it's electricity fire, let's make it blue and white." And he did that for me, and the whole process and I know it's not like this for everybody, so I don't wanna give anybody, unrealistic, it was probably 4 weeks for
That's
me.
really quick. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but he does it all the time, like, this is his business, this is what his livelihood is, and it's an amazing I love the cover, I think it's textured in a really great way, and
It's beautiful, and then you can
thank you.
hopefully make merch with it too, with the imagery, but I
I
think the
am.
takeaway here too that I want people to really understand is just how many resources there are for indie authors, and just like a publishing house has all these people in house, an art department, an editorial department, you can replicate that.
Mhm,
You can replicate that, and you can make a beautiful quality book, and you can publish it wide, and you can
mhm.
have beautiful professional cover, and you can have a professional audiobook. The time of it being inaccessible is over.
It is, and it's awesome, and
Yes,
I
it's a
and
revolution.
it is, and, they keep putting restrictions and hoops into every place, like, indie publishers can't be a New York Times bestseller
I
anymore.
know.
They took it away to do USA Today too. You can't Wall Street Journal? I think it was Wall Street Journal. They maybe not. I shouldn't say. I don't know who did it, but they just took away all of their bestsellers, so they didn't even have to make that decision. So,
Can I just say, as someone who's in the industry, There have been a lot of authors that we have signed because they were indie and were doing so well, and we were like, "Let's snatch them up and let's
Mhm.
make him a deal for the next book." So that is just so hypocritical.
Yes, and that's where so my manuscript did go to a couple places, and I really decided to do it myself, more of a control situation than it was anything else, but so because I've done a lot of freelance, I also see how much other organizations and other platforms take from you money-wise, and you still have to like, when you have a traditional publisher, you still have to kinda do all the work, like, you have to do all the footwork. They'll get you in some places, but you still have to market yourself, and you still have to pay to fly to wherever to be on a television show, and it usually comes out of your pocket.
They're looking for people with big followings and I'm like,
Mhm,
"Okay, so you want me to do all the marketing."
mhm.
And
Well,
it's difficult. I mean, I know that the traditional route is the right route for many other authors I've talked to, and
yeah,
I get very happy for them when they get the
yeah,
offer and really is the right fit for them and their dream, and their idea of what success means to them.
mhm,
So I don't knock that at all, and I've been around publishers for a long time,
mhm.
but I just don't like gatekeeping. So I like that
Yeah,
people have the option. I like that someone
yes.
that wants to put their story out there, the only reason it wouldn't happen is if they just don't do it.
I just didn't wanna wait either, because it takes a long time, and I'm like, "I already did my time. I don't want to wait for an agent to maybe possibly pick me up and all of those things, and it's okay, like, I understand. My one of my friends who is a USA Today bestseller, and she has all of this stuff, but only did indie publishing, and this was all before, the tide shifted and stuff, but she said that and I love it, she's like, "The system works the way that it was built to work." So,
Yes. Yes, put that one on a t-shirt too. We're gonna have a lot of
yeah,
t-shirts, Cara. You and I are gonna open a t-shirt shop. We're gonna have a lot of
yes,
t-shirts.
merch. Oh, you
Merch.
asked about merch too.
Yes.
I am doing a giveaway. My husband's family is very crafty, and we're gonna be doing, like, 5 book boxes, and each book box will have, like, a different keychain, and there's gonna be something else, but it'll all be handmade and everything.
I plus one this. See? See what I mean, authors? It's not just a book. I mean, I have
Right.
t-shirts from some authors that, indie authors, and they have t-shirts and they have merch, and I love it. It's the business of being an author
Right.
and just getting all aspects of your story out there. I would love to close our conversation with the question that I'm obsessed with lately, which is, what do you want to be true 12 months from now?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I have short-term and long-term goals. So, and again, this is sort of the way that I've figured out my brain works best. And, it really I really like it. But so, by 2026 in 12 months, I will probably have published at least book 2 and have written book 3. And then I do novellas in between. I don't know if you know that or not.
I want to read
I'll
the
send that
Aiden
to
and
you.
Max novella. I am very
Yeah.
interested.
The next novella will probably be out in March. It'll still be like 100 pages. It'll be Finn and Aiden's parents, their connection, them connecting their triumph perfectum.
I
So
love
it'll
it.
be that. And also going to do a pen name for PNR. So paranormal romance.
Okay, so
Um,
you're gonna write. Oh my
I
gosh.
really want to build something with my writing. I think it's really hard. Everybody come write. It's really hard to make money. Um,
Someone has
so
to say it. Someone has to say it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. My dad asks me all the time. He's like, "So after you publish your book, you're gonna be rich, right?" And I just laughed at him. And he's like, "What do you mean?" I
Not
was
even
like, "No."
close. I might be in the negative actually because I have now invested into into getting this book out.
Yes. So it'll be, older women, middle-aged romances with, paranormal twists and everything like that. So I'd like to at least get one of those out. By doing that, I'll be able to start circulating income a little bit easier because that'll also be a series, but it'll be like a romance series where these people get together and then these people get
Okay.
together and it'll be the same world. It will be in my Emberlin's world,
Oh,
Trinity
it
world.
will. So you're gonna keep it connected. I love
Yeah.
that.
Thank you.
I love
Thank you.
that. So, okay, a few novellas, a new series, but also book two of this.
Yeah, that's actually about 50% written. And then Philip and Rose, Aiden and Finn's parents, decided to no, I have to finish that first because what I do with the novellas is I put Easter eggs in the full length novel. So if you've read that, you know what the character's talking about, but it's not like so like what am I missing type of thing. It's just like a little, fun thing. So they're like, you have to know our story first before you finish writing this story. And I'll be done writing that on by Sunday. So then I'll get back to the full length. I would like to have that published actually, I want to say summer. I'd like
That's
to have
yeah.
it done faster, but I can't put that pressure on myself.
That's good. That's good. I'm also someone who likes to get everything done quick, and I schedule everything, and then I burn out, and then it takes me months to recover. So I'm learning
Yeah.
to pace
Yes.
correctly and not feel so much self-imposed pressure.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is, and it's sort of like you have to figure out how to do one step at a time while still looking at this great big wall of nothing will ever get finished.
Well, I have enjoyed this so much. Like I said, I find the writing to be just so beautiful. Your
Thank
characters
you.
to be so interesting. Once again, your magic system to be so cohesive and easy to understand. So I hope to be
Good.
finished by this weekend with it. I will eagerly await launch day. I hope that day you just feel like just this wonderful feeling inside, and I'm gonna make sure I message you and congratulate you. And
Thank
I'll
you.
also I'll patiently wait for my signed
Yes,
print book.
absolutely. I will do that.
Thank you so much, Cara.
I
I am
appreciate
gonna
it.
keep my eye on what's happening with you. I'll link the things we have mentioned in the show notes, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you talking to me as well. I had a really good time.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. For more information on today's episode, please check out the show notes. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast to receive new episodes right when they're released. You can subscribe right now in the app you're using to listen. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Reignite with Nicole. Lastly, I do have a quick favor to ask before we go. If you're enjoying the podcast, I hope you'll let me know by leaving a review. Thank you again for joining me in this episode of Writer Unblocked. I'll see you next time.